You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard foul.
Out here today, Mike, the day after what is going to go down as one of the probably the roughest nights in recent Celtics history, and we'll see where it ranks at the end of the day. Celtics lose in New York, going down 3-1, and that's typically would be the big story. But the big story is obviously the news that everyone knows about by now, which is Jayson Tatum's injury. As we wait to see the severity of it, Mike, they're going to call it a hard foul, and we're brought to you by the what?
Fan First Sport Network.
Bitch.
Yeah, Jim, it's a bitch. Yeah,
it is a bitch right now.
Yeah, man, that like when they were down 7, there wasn't much time. I think like 2 minutes left. I kind of the way New York was shooting the ball was like this game's over.
Yeah,
I felt like this series is over, and I was okay with it. I was like, the next one, like they outplayed the Celtics today. They just played great, and when Tatum went down, that's when, man, it just stinks. Like to see that happen to him. I just my whole reaction was just I just felt awful. I just felt really, really bad for him. Like he's so young. This season we've seen him grow into this special elite talent. We saw it last night with what he was doing all over the floor. To see something like this that can really hinder, I don't want to say derail, but hinder a guy's career and make them change the way they play. And hopefully those things don't happen. But yeah, it stinks. Like this is my favorite player in the league. This is why I do this podcast, guys like him. And this was worse than the loss. Like it has me thinking a bunch of different things. Like my head's spinning, my ADHD is in like high gear about like what happens to the team now, blah blah blah. And I just feel distraught. Like it really stinks what happened to Tatum last night.
Yeah, no, and it was coming off, like you said, just a tremendous all-around game. I felt the same way as you did as the lead was slipping away. But if there was going to be any way that, basketball is a funny sport. 3 minutes, you can be down 7, look like it's over, but we've seen it a million times. But if it was going to happen for the Celtics, it was because he was going to make plays down the stretch. And if, they were to still lose, which they probably would have, if they were to come back from a 3-1 deficit, it was going to be because he'd lead the way. And you would feel bad today and feel like the Celtics have very little chance, but you'd believe there was a puncher's chance because of how good this guy is. I feel terrible for him. I think, I can't help but think of the parallels to Larry Bird here, where at this age, his body started to fail him. With his heels and then eventually his back. You don't want to see that, obviously, for someone that's getting close to the height of their powers. You don't want to see it for a guy at 27 years old that there still might be another level to go up to. You hit on it. He had played the best basketball of his career. All season long and through that Orlando series. And he had a rough start to this series, but certainly put together just one of his best all-around playoff games, I think, not only for him, but probably in the history of the Celtics yesterday. Either tied or overtook Havlicek and Bird for the most 40-point games in Celtics history in the playoffs yesterday and did it in like 40 fewer games. Just a remarkable talent. A great Celtic on and off the court, and to have your season end like that, and now the future of your franchise and the future of his career kind of hanging here with so much uncertainty around it. It's just a devastating way for it to end in a sports sense. And unfortunately, that's how often things end in sports, is devastatingly. And I mean, and this really shows why it's so hard to repeat too. Health and luck play such a major role, and the health and luck certainly weren't there for the Celtics in this round. So just devastating night. We can get to the Knicks, and they deserve all the credit in the world yesterday. I do feel like the Celtics lost the first two games. I feel like the Knicks won yesterday and took it from the Celtics, but that's obviously secondary, which is unbelievable, right? It's just unbelievable that that's a secondary story as it relates to Tatum. And Mike, I don't know where it's going to go for him from here because of this type of injury. We were talking about it before the pod, and I'd love to hear from you, but the history on this isn't great. What we know right now, and it's limited what we do know, but WZVB, Channel 5 here in Boston, is reporting that it is an Achilles injury. Shams Charania of ESPN is reporting that the Celtics are bracing for the worst. So all that's left to kind of decide here is whether this is a partial tear or a full tear. Partial tear, is great news at this point. 3 to 6 months, we'll be back to basketball activities. Will be himself. Full tear, 12 to 18 months, somewhere around there. And Mike, I don't know what that looks like after that. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, if he has a full tear,
Yeah.
I mean, I I think his I think his career is going to be a lot different. I think he's going to play a lot less games. I think his risk for other injuries are going to go way up. If he has a full tear, they should probably do an MRI of the other leg just to see if there's anything at risk there. The way he plays may have to be different. I know, Durant came back and he was successful, but he plays a lot different than Jayson Tatum plays. And has a more reliable jumper. We're talking about one of the greatest shooters probably in the history of the game in Durant. But yeah, Tatum's in great shape, and I'm sure he can defy the odds. But it's it's not a great outlook. To expect him to be the same player after that, I think would be kind of living on fantasy island. I think he'll be a lesser version of himself, and that's really unfortunate. That's what makes me sad, just because of we've seen this kid develop into this special player, and we've been really lucky to have him here in Boston. And now that might be a thing of the past. Not saying he won't be effective. He'd probably still be an all-star level player, but I don't know if we're looking at a top 5 player in the league anymore, or a guy who will even be in those conversations, because he probably won't be a guy who can play 60 to 75 games a year. Typically, that's what you see happen to these guys. They play a lot less games. Of course, you saw what it did to Kobe Bryant's career.
He was a lot
Injury.
older.
Yeah, he was a lot older.
Yeah.
He was a lot older, but the wear and tear of Tatum and the amount of basketball he's played, is his body older than his age? I don't know.
Fair question.
There's a lot of unknowns, and I'm also really depressed about this, so I may not be the best person to be talking about it.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, best comp, if it is a tear, and knock on wood, although I do believe that it probably is. The best comp is you hope for is Kevin Durant, and Durant was 30. He was he was almost more than 2 years older than Tatum. Came back at 32, was fantastic in the season he returned, but was never the defender that he used to be.
No, I
Still,
like the dunker, and
yeah,
he did all those things in
but,
OKC.
but is still a very effective, skilled player. Tatum's 2 years younger. Um, Obviously, medicine improves all the time
Yeah,
on these things, and outlooks as years go by get better. Um, so that's the optimistic route, right? And if he comes back, and I think offensively, you could have made an argument that Durant, there wasn't really a drop off that first year back. It was pretty amazing. There's been a deterioration since then, but that probably has as much to do with age as it did with the injury. Um, but there's a million other guys that have gotten this injury, and it just never looks right afterwards. So
yeah. And your point to Durant, Jim. Oh, sorry. Why don't you finish?
no, go ahead.
Because I don't know if this is a
a smooth transition point of the pod, but like the injury obviously impacts Tatum and the Celtics in the future of the franchise. And to your point to Durant, I think part of his transition was so smooth as a player is because he was put in a position in Brooklyn where he was surrounded by a cast that was super talented, could score the basketball, could play his way. You know, it was really tailor made for Durant's game to have James Harden and Kyrie Irving, Joe Harris. Remember that team had Jeff Green, like guys who could just really spread the floor and score. They brought in Blake Griffin at one point. Um, and it gets you thinking about the future of this Celtics team. If you want a smooth transition for Tatum, how do you effectively get under this second apron for consecutive years so you have a team that Tatum can return to, that he's going to be effective and they can still compete? And I think that's going to be a real challenge for Brad Stevens,
Oh,
to look at this team, to look at this outlook of draft picks that they have and contracts, and even take a look at the coaching. And is this style of play that they play? Is this the best way to win? I think there's a lot of things that they're going to have to talk about internally that are going to be tough, and they're going to have to make some really, really hard decisions on steroids now because of this injury.
yeah, I think we're going to get to that in a second, maybe in a few minutes. But yeah,
Sure.
no, there's a lot going on here, and yeah, there could very well be a change in style of play. I think part of the reason why the style of play has worked so well for the Celtics is because of the level of talent. They've just been loaded with a bunch of guys that can play this way and be effective in the style of play and have been effective in the style of play. The results will diminish if you don't have that talent or this type of players on your team. So, and things are going to change. It's just there. That's the breathtaking part of this whole thing, Mike, is that for it to end this way, you knew, no matter what, if the Celtics won it all or, came up short, which is always the likely scenario because it's just so hard to win and repeat. Um, there were going to be changes. This accelerates it on steroids, especially if it's more than a partial tear. If it's a full tear, this accelerates those changes that have to be made on steroids, at least in my belief on what you need to do going forward, both from a cap perspective and a team building perspective. I just to Jayson Tatum, though, before we get there or go anywhere, I can't stress enough. And he's gotten a lot of unnecessary shit and grief, both from the national media and local media here and at local radio station. And God knows what they're saying about him today. I haven't listened, but
They've been singing his praises.
there has not been a better model for a star that you could have asked for with these last, however long he's been in the league.
Yep.
He is responsible. He takes personal responsibility for himself, both on and off the court. Um, he acts in a respectful way. He handles his off court duties. I remember that wonderful story about him and the young boy who was a cancer patient that he took under his wing during the finals run last year. And, every year he sought to improve his game one way or the other, whether it was becoming a better distributor, defender, shooter, rebounder, whatever it is, to help rise his level of play and the level of his teammates. And it wasn't always easy. He came into a team that was in a win ready mode. And it turned out to be a really bad culture. And by the time it was in his second season, and he never let it affect him. Never let any of that rot change his perspective on who he was or what he wanted to be. And I just think we're very fortunate, especially when you look around the league, when you look around the landscape of professional sports, guys with this type of character and this type of talent don't often come together. And we've been very, very lucky. And I think that's what, really makes this suck because you look at him, you look at his body type. This is the type of guy you think plays into his mid 30s and his hair the vast majority of his career and you go through the highs and lows with him, and you're always going to have a chance to win because of his talent and his leadership and those type of things. And now you have this huge level of uncertainty going forward for both him and the franchise. And it just, and I hope with modern medicine and where we are in today's world, it's different. But I just can't get away from the parallels between him and Bird at just about the same age. And Bird's heals, then the back injuries came later. And before you know it, he's 30, 31 years old, and it's over. Now, I don't think
Yeah.
Tatum's going to be done at 30, 31, but how much does this change the course for him in the Celtics franchise? And what do the Celtics do now, to your point, that they didn't do in the 80s? And I think we can put a pause on what they're going to do in a minute because we want to talk about the series and the game last night. But I just felt like we needed this guy deserves his flowers right now, what he's meant to this team and what he's meant to this city.
Yeah, well said. I agree with everything you said. There's not much more to be said there. I mean, um, he's one of the greatest athletes in my generation, and I hope that he doesn't have a serious injury and he's able to bounce back because he deserves it. So time will tell, and um, whatever happens, he's had a great career here with the Celtics. So
Oh, yep. No, for sure. Mike, let's transition to the subplot somehow of game five. A game with the Celtics
oh,
had in hand, it looked like, although I think there was signs early with the rebounding. And then there were certainly signs at the beginning of the second half with the defense. But it looked like going into halftime, the Celtics were poised to be 2-2 and really have control of the series and perhaps well on their way to getting back to the NBA Finals. Um, but instead, another second half collapse, 14-point comeback by the Knicks. But the difference, I think, this time was I think the Knicks earned it more than the Celtics lost it,
oh, big time.
as opposed to the first two games where I felt like the Celtics just lost it.
The Knicks earned it on the floor, and they earned it with the coaching. It was a masterclass of really like perfect playoff basketball in the second half. They went um, 25 for 37, I believe, or something like that from two for the game. They shot 75% from two.
Yeah.
Incredible
And
stuff.
a lot of that mid-range stuff with Brunson and Bridges. Just
Yeah,
yeah,
just
yeah.
just in 20 for 35 shooting overall in the second half. And five of their misses were offensive rebounds. So they, even when they missed, they were able to, I don't know if they converted all five of those, but, and out of timeouts, especially during Celtics runs, the Knicks would take a punch and then come right back. And that was really impressive. You talk about that third quarter, the Celtics actually looked pretty good for the first 2 minutes.
I don't know if I agree, but yeah,
They
I thought
extended,
offensively it was okay. Defensively, I thought they were a mess.
they extended their lead, and then Tibbs
Yeah,
used this timeout. They came out of that timeout. And I also want to give Carl Anthony Towns some credit. He defensively, he
he was
obviously
better.
struggles getting out on the 3-point shot, but guys trying to take him to the basket last night. There was one time Pritchard took him, blocked his shot. A couple times Tatum and Brown went after him, and he stayed in front of him. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson had a really great game, offensive rebounding. So, and then there's Jalen Brunson, who played
And
probably one of the
Bridges too.
best.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Brunson probably played one of the best games in Knicks history.
yeah. No,
Um,
he was amazing. And to your cap point, I felt like even when Tatum was scoring on him, it was just Tatum having one of those nights. I don't think it was bad defense.
no, I thought Cat played good last night.
Yeah.
And to the Celtics, I mean, this is completely disappointing. There's no other way around it. You blew two games at home.
Hmm.
Um,
Those are the ones. And last night, I feel like is a regular playoff loss.
to a point,
The two home losses are the ones that are unforgivable.
yeah. Um, it was interesting though that things got tight, and things got tight with the Celtics again. I mean,
Yep.
the stat that's out there today, the last 5 possessions of the third quarter, the Celtics didn't have a pass.
Yeah.
So they didn't pass the ball. Complete ISO, waiting till there's 8 seconds left on the shot clock. I know I was texting you a little bit about it, but I didn't realize that. Um, they really got away from moving the ball, trying to drive to the hoop. And this is what tends to happen to them in this series when things got tight. The offense would still get open looks for three, but as I think I was texting to you, yeah, you can tell me that's the right shot. But the way they look right now, is that the shot they should be taking? Um, or should they be going to the basket more? And, the Celtics have a little bit of a history now in these games when things get close. Either on the defensive end, they can't get a rebound or they can't make a stop. Or on offense, like games 1 and 2, you saw that disaster. Um, and they have to really look at themselves here, not just as far as who stays and who goes, but why, when things get tough with this Celtics team, do we have a history of ending our seasons this way against teams that we're better than? In the last 2 times they've lost now, they were better than Miami. They were better than New York. Um, I think they have to look at this as what is our issue that we keep running into, because it's pretty much unacceptable that their season's going to end this way. In my opinion, I don't want to take anything away from the Knicks.
No.
The Knicks could make it to the NBA Finals. That Knicks Pacers series probably going to be epic like it was last year. If the Knicks didn't lose guys last year, they could have been playing the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals if Brunson doesn't get hurt and all those other guys don't get hurt. But the Celtics have more talent, and something's just not right. And you can look at coaching a little bit. I thought the two bigs in the fourth quarter was hurting them defensively. I thought KP was playing a little bit too much and was hurting them on both ends.
Well,
Um,
they attacked KP in that fourth quarter. Like they went
yeah,
right. Bridges just went right at him with the mid range game, and KP couldn't contest it. He just
I thought,
couldn't he couldn't get there to contest it. It was and good on the Knicks would continue to go back to it. And Joe wanted to get him out, but they only had one timeout left, and they couldn't get a stoppage in play.
yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it. And it felt like in this series that Tibbs was, and this typically happens when the teams win. It's usually talent and the coaches look good, but it looked like Tibbs was, making, I want to say he did make some adjustments. The Knicks went to the pick and roll in the fourth quarter with Towns. And they were better out of timeouts. And offensively, the Celtics didn't seem like they were running any plays in the fourth quarter or the end of the third quarter. And there
Well,
weren't any
I
adjustments defensively. It just felt, yeah, it just got out of control.
Yeah, I look back to just games 1 and 2. Like, I don't know what more Missoula could have really done yesterday. He called timeouts often to try to stem the bleeding when it was happened to the point where he was out of them. Like I there's
But
not a
can I ask
lot
you a question
left.
about those timeouts?
Sure,
Did it seem to you like there was a difference in the series out of timeouts where the Knicks were prepared and the Celtics weren't?
at times, sure, at times.
Yeah.
I thought what I saw this last night, and this is why games 1 and 2 are unforgivable. I thought Holiday and Horford both looked old and tired,
Yep.
and weren't able to do what they typically can do defensively. They weren't given resistance at all. Jaylen Brown, he's playing on a bad knee. Maybe that's it, but he's out there playing. Um, was a disaster class on both ends of the floor. Just not an effective player to pick up 3 fouls, two of them
Mhm.
offensive, one of them on a loose ball.
Pushing a
And
guy in
then
the
to have the
back.
amount of live ball turnovers he had. There were just times, Mike, I think I texted you in the third quarter that this offense is fine, except for when his Brown like brains melts.
Yeah.
And there was one time where Holiday made the absolute right play. He went to the post up. And the idea there is that you have to Holiday's so strong, you're either going to draw the help or he's going to be able to even bigger guys, we see him do it all the time,
Take that hook shot
take him
type
down
things.
and get
Yeah.
a high percentage shot.
Yeah.
Brown, for whatever reason, sat in the paint. and just drew an extra defender and himself. Now there's not even an outlet pass. Holiday can barely see the floor, and there's an extra defender. Like it was just there was moments like that that just happened over and over and over again, accumulating with the play that Tatum got hurt. I'm not blaming Brown, but with that turnover that he had.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think he's overcompensating a bit for that knee?
I do, and so that's why
Yeah.
this gets back to 1 and 2. I'm glad you said that. I don't think he's 100%. I don't think he's close, um, and that's why not closing games 1 and 2 just criminal. Whereas last night there are basketball reasons why this
The
thing kind
the
of
Knicks were
melted down.
balling. The Knicks were balling. That's what
Knicks were
happened.
balling,
Yep.
and you were not. At the end of the
Yeah.
game, you looked like a tired team, and the Knicks looked like a way better, more equipped basketball team than you. And it'd be one thing if it's 3-1 because you did what you were supposed to do and you were up 3-1, but now you're down 3-1 and you lost your best player and your season's on the brink.
Yeah, and they really don't have answers for Mitchell Robinson, which has been a huge deterrent in this series.
Robinson didn't even play in the third quarter
I
until the very
know.
end.
I kept thinking about that when I was like, why isn't he playing Robinson? Um, but I mean, throughout the series, just what he's doing to you, you cannot end possessions against these Knicks. They just one rebound after another, and then when he's on the floor on the defensive end, the Celtics just look horrified, like they don't want to go to the paint because he's in the game. I think I don't know if you said it on a pod or if we were talking about basketball off the pod, but you said that, they better lock him up, right? Even with his free throw shooting, that I want that guy if I'm a team.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm Golden
Well,
State
you
or
look at all the teams.
something, yeah.
Look at all the teams that are left. They are really good at the big position. Miles Turner, man, was I wrong about him early in his career? He's a
Well,
fantastic
Golden
player.
State's not. They're
No,
not good.
well, I mean the teams that are going to advance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Rudy
yeah.
Gobert. You look at obviously the Knicks, Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns, and then the Thunder with Hardenstein, Stein, and although he has not been good,
He
what's
was good in
the
the last game on the
no, not
defensive end.
Hardenstein, the other
Uh,
kid. What's the young
Chet,
kid there?
Chet Holmgren.
Holmgren.
Yeah.
He's been awful.
Well,
Um,
I thought he played really good defense in Game 4.
he's like the Thunder net rating with him on the floor is it's like 105 offensive, 101 defensive. With him off the floor, it's like 116 to 102. Like he has just been a deterrent for them, but he's a good player with a huge upside. I
Yeah.
guess is what I'm saying. They are solid there, and even the Celtics last year, they were really solid at that position. So it's so important. Um, so he has real lot of value, whether it's with the Knicks, and I don't think the Knicks will move him. I think teams will call on him, but I don't think the Knicks will move him.
You bring up a good point too, because like the Celtics are not solid there, at least in
Not
the
right now.
series.
No, no, they
No,
should be. And it was a position they were solid with most of the season, with great depth. But this sickness that KP has had, and I do give him credit for trying. This isn't like the long body failing him. He's dealing with something
yep.
that's
We
obviously
still
been,
don't know what it is.
yeah.
Yep.
But it has a domino effect, and Al's been really good for most of these playoffs, but last night he looked like an old man.
Yeah, he struggled, and Cornette has been great all season, and he's getting beat up in this
It's a different speed
series.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, he might have lost himself a few dollars.
Oh, I don't think so.
Um,
There's still a value for a guy like him.
nah, he's coming back on the minimum. You didn't hear? Yeah, so I mean, as we look forward here, there is a game tomorrow night. Um,
I think they're going to play well tomorrow night, Mike.
I think they're gonna win Game 5. I do. My
Yeah.
confidence in Game 6 is not very high.
No,
Uh,
I don't
but
know
I
if they'll
do
win
think they're
tomorrow
gonna
night, but
win.
I think they're going to go out, even if whether win or lose, they will go out fighting.
Yeah, I think the Knicks are gonna get kind of in love with themselves here. Their fans are like already moving on, and I could see some
It screams,
complacency.
yeah, it screams letdown, especially with Tatum out, right?
Yeah, it really does. Celtics usually rise up in these occasions, and although I think they're going to lose Game Six, I do not think it's going to be a blowout. I think I still think we're looking at competitive games, and the better team, at least for this series, is going to move on. The New York Knicks are going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I do think for basketball fans out there, in my opinion, we're still going to have two more games left in our season. It's going to end Game Six, and I think the Celtics are going to still play competitive.
They're
That's
the
what.
better team now. Mike, I don't. I, the better team doesn't always win a series, and for the first three games, the Knicks were not the better team. They won, but that doesn't make them better. The Celtics puked all over themselves. But now, last night, for sure. But on the
Well,
whole, the Knicks
let
have
me put
not
it
been the
this
better
way:
team.
during crunch time, the better team was the New York Knicks, and
Yeah.
that's not debatable.
No, that's not
Um,
debatable. That's not
and
debatable. No.
Jalen Brunson, I heard this stat on the ride in today. Listen to this one, Jim. Through 10 games, he has 104 fourth quarter points in the playoffs. That's the most in NBA history through the first 10 games of a postseason. Second was Kobe Bryant with 100. So he's on pace if they win this whole thing, go all the way.
They're not going to.
No,
No.
but if they go all the way, which they could make it to the finals, he could end the playoffs with the most fourth quarter points in postseason history.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, he could. I think the Pacers are a better team. I think it'll be a good series. I think the Pacers. Well, I'm also kind of hoping and wishing this because when it was a plus 1,800, I threw 25 bucks on the Pacers.
there you
Uh,
go.
so
I hear you on the Paces. I got a little bit of respect for this Knicks team. I think there's something different about them with the way they play. When somebody puts a run on them, they don't quit. There is no quit um, that I've seen from this team that makes me believe that this Pacers game, this is going to go 7 games like last year. There's going to be a seventh game at the Garden. Maybe the Pacers could pull it out again, but I think it's going to be an epic series. I do, and it's two teams that hate each other, and but no, we're not there yet. Maybe the Celtics win 3 in a row, but we're not
no,
we're
no,
not
we're
there
not
yet.
there yet.
Yeah,
I think we are really close to being there.
we are. We are.
But hey, look, I think tomorrow. Let's just focus on
Can't you
game.
see Jalen Brown dropping 40 tomorrow? I can.
I could see that. I think there's pride with guys like Holiday and Horford. It was interesting. Porzingis said after the game, this is the best his energy's felt. So maybe you're getting 25 out of him. And
Well, you
if
got to start him tomorrow.
Yeah, and if that shooting kind of comes back, I don't know what Hauser's availability is going to be, but it would be really, especially with Tatum out, it would be really kind of key to have him. Um, so yeah,
Play the
and that's
rookie.
another injury that we've never even mentioned. So yeah, no, I think they're gonna. I don't know if I'm picking them to win. I want them to win, so I'll for that reason I'll pick them to win on this. But I think they're gonna you're gonna be proud of the effort tomorrow at the very least.
Proud of the effort, but disappointed with the outcome. And I am disappointed in this team. I'm not going to go. I want to make sure I say that I am disappointed with this team right now. Um, and I'm very interested to see what's going to happen next, Jim. I mean, it's one thing. This season was going to end this way with or without Tatum, right? Like they were going to lose last night. Didn't look like they were coming
Yeah.
back. Um, but with Tatum healthy, the conversation would be like, okay, they got to get under the apron. They're either
Well,
going
if
to
Tatum
move.
was healthy, we'd be saying right now, okay, if they win game five, we still think they'll lose six, but
There's
it's kind of
they could
interesting.
do it.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah,
interesting. They're still the better
yeah,
team. But there's an extra day off. But
yeah.
now
I
it's
think
not that.
yeah, and you make a good point. I think my overall point is though that the conversation about the off season would be, they got to cut a couple guys, trade them away,
Yeah.
um, and run this thing back. Like figure out a way like to do
Yeah.
this without Holiday and Porzingis, get under the apron or whatever, so they're not paying that taxing and bring
Yeah.
in some veterans or whatever. Now the conversation is a lot different, in my opinion. And I don't know if we're ready for this reality that we might be looking right after the NBA Finals because things in the NBA pick up steam quickly. Um, we could be looking at a rebuild.
Yeah. I think it's funny. In my head, I'm ready for the conversation. I do think just thank goodness they won that championship last year.
right?
Because this era, unless it's a 3 to 6 months, then I think it's a different conversation. If it's a 3 to 6 month injury, obviously it's a different conversation.
Absolutely, it is.
But
Yeah,
if it is what we think it is, I think this era is over. You could um, Jayson Tatum could have a second era with a different looking Celtics team, but this era is over.
yeah,
And that's just the hard reality of sports. There were always going to be uncomfortable decisions you were going to have to make with this roster. We knew that. Maybe even unpleasant is a better word to use than uncomfortable. We've always known that. It's here. It was going to be here regardless. This speeds it up even more. I think some maybe more difficult, unpleasant decisions you're going to have to make. But thank goodness for that championship. That changes the perspective of this whole thing. It made everything they've done worthwhile, even though this year, you could call a failure if you wanted to because of going out in the second round and coming up short. But it all made everything worthwhile because they got that one. And that's one they can't take away from them. And that's here forever. So, um, especially with the injury now, thank goodness for that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
Go ahead.
yeah, it's I've been thinking a lot about this too. Like originally, when I thought about this offseason, it was you have to figure out a way to move Porzingis and probably Holiday.
Yeah.
And
I think it gets easier now.
yeah, but now I look at it like not only am I moving them, I'm also thinking about Derek White and Jaylen Brown because Tatum's going to be gone for a whole season. Do you want to try to get your best asset and more guys? I know you've made some comments to me over text about Brown. Um, like Derek White only makes $28 million a year. That is a value add to a franchise. Like it has me
Yeah, but that's why it's a value add to the Celtics.
right. But when I think about what brings in the most assets for a rebuild, um, does it make sense to trade all four of these guys? I think isn't crazy to have the conversation. Like if OKC doesn't win the NBA Finals, for example, and they because it's like lined up for them now. Like say they don't get past Denver, wouldn't it make sense for OKC to look at the Celtics and say, we're actually really interested in Derek White, and we have a lot that we can give you.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's
I
scenarios where I could see like a full rebuild happening. Is what I'm saying. There's scenarios where I could see it.
yeah, it really. So the first thing that was the obvious thing you want to get under that second apron. I think without Tatum now, you really need to get under the both aprons, which is um you got to create 32 million plus in space because you're going to take a salary back. Um, so it really there's a lot of money that needs to go out the door here.
And you would need to get expiring contracts.
Yeah, and well, maybe. I mean, it depends who you get, and are those players tradable? Like, there's a lot of team building exercises here that, a lot of different variables that you
Hmm.
look at when you do this. I mean, what was so great about Danny Ainge is sometimes you take on guys with multiple years that are really good tradable players because of the contracts they had, which sometimes are more valuable than expirings.
Right.
And there's not a lot of good players that become available in free agency anymore because of the cap. So you almost want to have more trade assets than working to get yourself as a player in free agency in today's
Right.
NBA.
You have to draft well.
And you got to draft well. And you want as many picks as you can have when
Exactly.
you're rebuilding this thing. So look, it's gonna be tough. It's to watch what happens to this team in the offseason. I think Porzingis and Holiday all but certainly gone. I don't think you get a comeback, but maybe you get a first round pick and a veteran player.
You
For
got to think
Holiday,
Al
maybe you get
Horford's gone.
seconds for Porzingis and a veteran player or a young player.
Yeah.
I don't think Al Horford's here anymore, as you just mentioned. Um, I don't know what the future for Sam Hauser is here anymore.
I'm
Although
not concerned. He can go.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Although with his contract and age, there's some reason to try to keep him here. Um, but then you get into the two big ones that you
Yep.
mentioned, which Jaylen Brown and Derek White. And I look at this from what is best for the team in terms of roster building for when Tatum is back. And I think the guy you get the most for, because of his age, because of the amount of years he's locked up for, and because of his talent, is Jaylen Brown.
Right.
And he gets you well under you get out of his contract. Um, you don't have to worry about really the aprons, and you certainly don't have to worry about it when Tatum returns.
There's a huge risk in that, though.
Oh, sure there is.
Huge.
There's
Yeah.
reason to keep him. I'm not
Oh, yeah.
arguing against it. Yeah.
And there are potentially blockbuster moves that could happen. Like, for instance, if I'm Dallas and I'm gonna get Cooper Flag right now, I'm looking at that Kyrie expiring contract, and if Jaylen Brown's available, like, do I offer that expiring contract and
They
a
don't have
boatload
enough
of
to get Jaylen Brown.
enough picks?
Yeah, they have what they all they have is one pick.
All they have is one.
Yeah. I think that they don't even have their own picks anymore.
Well,
They only
they,
picked up one Laker draft pick.
and I thought I was looking today that saw they had some.
I don't think they do.
Okay. And then
They would
obviously,
be an interesting team, yeah.
yeah, and obviously Houston.
Houston, yeah.
You have that Fred Van Fleet contract that'll be expiring, and you can, put another player in there to match the 54 million, and you have the Phoenix picks. You have your number 10 pick this year that you certainly can dangle to the Celtics. But what will happen, and this will be tough, is that Houston will immediately be an NBA Finals contender after that trade. I think because the way Brown played with this knee injury, maybe people are short-sighted in how good this guy is. But
Well,
just watch the tape from last year. He's still that guy.
here's a haul that Portland got for Damian Lillard, and this was 2 seasons ago. And I think Brown is a better outset than Lillard. Salary comp is similar. Brown was a lot younger, more prize position. The Portland Trail Blazers got Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Kamara, a 29 first round pick from Milwaukee, two Swift pick swaps from Milwaukee. So they got three players, all of them with value, and a first round pick from the Bucks that looks pretty good all of a sudden, and two pick swaps that look pretty good all of a sudden. So I think at minimum, that's the type of package you're looking for and will be getting for Jaylen Brown.
Yeah. I mean,
And I think that's a baseline minimum.
yeah, but they're still a bad team. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, I don't know if really is a tradable guy because he's not that good.
Well,
I
they
mean,
were able to send Holiday out for
Holiday,
more
yeah,
picks. Like so they got things where they can reconstruct this team, and they got essentially three picks because those swaps are going to be valuable with the direction the Bucks are heading. And Kamara is a good player.
but what
So
if you,
that's a
yeah,
minimum. That's a minimum that you should get for Brown.
but what if you, because the Celtics do own all their draft picks except 2028, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what if you looked at this the other way? Just look at this in a different way. And they traded White, Holiday, and Porzingis and got whatever they could. And when Tatum came back, the rebuild is still happening, but the rebuild's happening with Tatum and Brown still. I don't think Brown's that old when Tatum gets back. He's only going to be 30. Um, there's still a chance that, in my mind, that could work. I mean, I
Yeah,
would,
it,
yeah,
it definitely, and maybe there's an argument to be made that you keep Brown and then trade him the following season because as a 1A guy now, his value goes up. His value could go down as a 1A too. I think now's the time to trade him if you're going to do it because of his age, because of the longevity left on his contract.
yeah.
Um,
It's hard though. It's hard.
and then you're looking at when he comes back, he still has 2 more years left when would be due to come back at numbers of like 63 and 65 million. So just keeping those two players are essentially going to get you to the first apron almost every single time. And how do you build from there? It gets really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you only can you
You
build through
get,
the draft.
it gets really, really difficult as opposed to you have Tatum and you have all these picks and you have space to bring players on via trade and build that way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only other point would be that Tatum and Brown brought, Marcus Smart and Rob Williams and Grant Williams to the conference finals and NBA finals. I feel like they can still win with regular guys. They don't need all this talent. Um,
It's a good point.
it's yeah, I mean it's tough. Like I get it, and if it happens, it happens. But I also look at like next season if they don't trade Jaylen Brown, like they won't be great. They might be like a 40-something win team, but
It'll be a playing team, probably.
watching him play every night, like he's gonna put up. He might lead the league in scoring.
Yeah, well,
Like,
that's the thing. Like you could maybe it's the thing you say. He grows his game and between him and Tatum, you have something in a couple of years, or maybe it's he increases his trade value. There's also the possibility that as a 1A, he doesn't look so hot
yeah,
over the course
yeah.
of the season. And what does that do to his trade value? Um, I don't know. It's a tough decision for Brad. I think if I was in his spot, I'd
You
be
gotta
at the
look at
very
everything,
least listening and talking to teams.
and they have to make the trade before the draft, right? With him,
Not necessarily, but
it
it'd be
makes it
better
it
if you
makes it
do.
easier though,
Yeah,
right?
it'd
For
be better if
all
you do.
sides.
Like
Yeah,
if
I mean,
you trade with Houston, it'd be good to do it before the draft because they have a top 10 pick this year. And you'd
yeah,
want to make that pick yourself.
yeah. Of course. I mean, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Unless you,
the downside of this is, you trade Brown and those other guys are gone. You are you're going to be really bad next year.
yeah, it's gonna be awful. The pod's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
The most exciting talk is gonna be off-season talk and trade deadline talk. Um, we'll see a lot of Baylor Shireman out there if they do this stuff. A good fit for Holiday. I know we keep saying the Spurs. I don't know if financially it makes sense for Orlando, or if there's even an expiring contract to get from them. But I was thinking him on Orlando
Yeah,
was
Porzingis might be a good fit for Orlando too. I think about these things from time to time. I I haven't really, I know you went through the trade machine. I haven't even got my head around that yet. I'm just more thinking, all right, what financially speaking, and who could probably bring back the most, just with Team X, whatever Team X is, and how to accelerate this thing going forward. Um, because I think what you need to do is you need to one hope and pray that Tatum comes back to be at least a replica of what he is now, or close to, and then you are in position in that offseason that he's going to come back to really make some moves to make yourself, if not a title contender, a solid playoff team.
yeah. I mean it's yeah, and it starts right away. I mean this draft they have their pick and then they have Washington's second round pick, which is
Yeah.
the second pick of the second round. Those are two picks they have to hit on.
Well, that's
Um,
that's a good thing they do have. If when we, it's sad that we're already talking about the rebuild, but unlike a lot of teams, like unlike Milwaukee,
they have their
they
picks.
have their picks. Yeah, like Milwaukee's going to trade Giannis and then have to hope and pray that the team he trades it to sucks.
Thanks. Which is
Yeah,
going to be hard
yeah,
because it's fucking Giannis. They're not going to suck.
yeah, and then they're gonna hope maybe they get some picks from other teams in the process. But they're also gonna have to bring on a player to keep them somewhat competitive because their picks are meaningless to them right now.
Yep. Yeah, it's why if I'm Milwaukee, I'm not trading them. I'm trying to figure this thing out.
Yep. And it's supposed to be
Yeah.
another strong draft next year. Obviously the kid from Brockton,
Yep.
the consensus number one pick.
And he's going to BYU. I've heard stories about how they got him that I can't say on the pod. I'll tell you off the pod. I got an inside source too
They
that I
gave him
know
a
it's
lot of.
true.
He's making a lot. He's making more money than he'll make as a first year pro.
I would say
Um,
it's not just money.
okay. We're not speculating on anything like that on here, but he is he's a he'd be the prize of the draft, obviously. But yeah, Mike, it's some really tough decisions for Brad Stevens. And this is the difference between good and great GMs. Like he did a great job putting the finishing touches on a championship team. Now it's, can he do what Danny Ainge did?
Yeah, and does Joe Mazzulla survive? That's the
I
other part that we have to talk about.
I think
I mean,
so.
you're seeing coaches get fired all over the place. Two, 2 weeks before the playoffs start. Now the Celtics are going to end. This is a huge disappointment, right? So you got to look at everything the way this season ended.
Yeah, but he did just win a championship. You can look at reasons on why this is ending the way.
But does his style of play work for a rebuild, Jim?
Well, who's to say he can't coach a different style? I think he coached the best style for his talent. I thought this style fit his talent. Um, and it obviously worked. You can say maybe it came up short this year, but on the whole, it worked. An Eastern Conference final, an NBA final, and this is the biggest disappointment. But it worked. I think he's on the right if to coach this rebuild. And let's see how he can be with developing players. Let's see how he can be in a really much more difficult situation and what they look like.
Yeah.
As we saw, the Hornets tried to play like the Celtics this year. If you don't have the skilled players,
No, you can't.
it doesn't work.
And
So
the other thing too is like I don't know if this style of play necessarily wins championships. Last year they didn't shoot that many threes in the postseason run, um, compared to what we saw against the Knicks. And I do think uh, the analytics work and the 3-point shot's important. But I think they have to take a look internally about adjustments, especially with the amount of talent that they had. I think there are other ways they could have played during this run, to beat Miami and to beat the Knicks. And I do think that's a conversation that they have to have. And now they have a rebuild coming. They just want to make sure they're right, that Joe's the right guy for that rebuild. They got to.
yeah,
I think they have to take a deep look at everything. Is all I'm saying.
it's the unfortunate but fortunate situation they're in that they can afford to figure this out on the fly. There's not going to be an expectation to win games. So you can see how this works and how he does with these type of players and in these situations and in these environments. Um, you
He's got to
know,
be able to develop them. That's
yep.
what's important.
And
Yeah.
it might not always look correct to us, but they'll know from within whether it's working. I mean, maybe there were people in Oklahoma City when things were terrible and the record was terrible to fire Mark Daigneault, but he grew up with that team and it worked out.
Yeah.
Um, So you got to see what happens here.
Right.
You
And
know, and we don't, there's just this injury is such a cloud right now over this franchise because you're not going to have clarity on really where you are probably until midway through the season that Tatum returns.
exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that's in part of this evaluation of what they're going to do moving forward. These teams that do it right, and the Celtics are one of those teams, you didn't just build young talent, you brought in the correct veterans
Yep.
during those lean years. And, OKC finding a way to get SGA, um, is a big part of why they are where they are now, not all the draft picks that they have. And there are deals to be made. There are players that you identify, like the Knicks identifying Jalen Brunson and valuing him way more than the Mavericks valued him. Like there's things that you can do to keep this thing afloat, as you're rebuilding. You can do both. You can compete and rebuild. And I do think that is the best way to move forward. And Brad's going to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the first domino, and I think we'll learn this, before the draft
We
because whether
will.
they make the move or not, I think it's going to be Brown. and the decision they make there on him. And that's part of the reason. And I hope people don't take this the wrong way. I actually love Jaylen Brown. I love what he's done as a player. I love what he gave them during the run last year. He grew up here. Wish he could be a Celtics for life, but that's just not the reality of professional sports. And I think that's why I wanted to play so well tomorrow night and to close the series. I wanted to be a sweet moment for him. But the mistake, and I look at the parallel, and I hope I'm wrong. I don't want this to be the parallel, but I look at the parallel to the Bird and the 80s and holding on to those guys. And then they got old. And then they were a second round out, and an uninspiring second round out consistently. Is that what you want to become? And the difference here is that guys stay younger longer. But the other difference is the cap situation. You can't really build a team with two guys that are on a supermax like this, especially if one isn't playing for a whole season.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of this. That's the reality of the situation. And that's kind of it.
All right. Well, with that, we have Game 5 on Wednesday, and we'll go from there.
All right. Talk to everyone soon.
See you, Joe.